Now the story of a World Wide Web that connected everything, and the one YouTuber who had no choice but to keep it all apart. It's spoiler, I hardly. House of the Dragon, for those who are not in the know, is, strictly speaking, you call it a prequel series to Game of Thrones. I'd say more just, it takes place within the same world as Game of Thrones. It is well over 100 years beforehand. Everyone who exists in the show is dead long before the events of Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is set in the aftermath of the Targaryen dynasty. House of the Dragon is, here is the Targaryen dynasty at its height. What happens within this dynasty when you get a dynastic power struggle, essentially. Spoiler warning for the first 2 seasons of House of the Dragon. I have not read Fire and Blood, which is the book that is adapted into the 4 seasons of House of the Dragon. I really do not know what happens in the remaining 2 seasons. Kia ora whānau. I just wanted to drop in with an update on how my bingo card is doing, with us 2 episodes in after the second episode released yesterday, and of course the first episode released a week ago. Obviously spoilers from here on out. Let's look through the bingo and see what we've ticked off so far 2 episodes into the season. We are, after all, a quarter of the way into the season. There are only 6 more episodes to go. First up, House Words. Okay, interesting. Do I count this? Because I don't believe we've heard any said out loud so far as I can tell. But the name of the first episode is Salton Sea, Fire and Blood. I actually don't know whether Salton Sea is like a Valeron House Words, but obviously Fire and Blood is the Targaryen one, so I think this is going to depend on whether Salton Sea is any House's Words. I'll have to look that up, and either I'll be crossing this off in post, or I won't. Dead Targaryen and flashback/vision. We've just had no flashbacks or visions. The series, the closest we get to any, past mentions is Otto saying, like having one last throwback to Viserys, everything I did for Viserys. So that's cool. Valyrian dagger, no. Although we have strayed dangerously close with Daemon on his "I saw in the future the mother of dragons," blah blah blah. Which, yeah, I refreshed on how the second season ends, and I got to see his whole vision. I really don't like that stuff. I have real issues with how it's delivered. I think, to me, the way I would put it is I would be a lot more okay with it if other characters logically reacted to Daemon's about face as really irrational and strange and making them kind of uneasy about him, because he is a guy who just had some random visions and suddenly shows up and is like, I had some visions that convinced me to finally change my entire personality and stop being so disloyal and ride or die for my lovely wife. And I feel like it would be a lot more interesting if the other characters around him had a reaction to that, instead of it just being him saying to Rhaenyra, I saw the same thing you did, and her being like, okay, cool, we're on the same page now. In any case, happy Pride Month. Westeros, nothing that I can think of, and we've come out of Pride Month now, unfortunately, but it's still going to count if something like that happens. Aemond LARPs as Daemon. This has not happened yet, but Aemond is pretty clearly dead set this season on taking out Daemon, just as Daemon really wants his dragon seeds to confront Aemond. And I think we're going to be heading in this direction, because now that Aemond is at the mercy of the witch, whose name I don't remember, but who is really cool, she has had a lot of contact with Daemon. Daemon has now rebuffed her ultimate request, which is to get to be the latest owner of Harrenhal, which is a great prospect, by the way. You really want to have that deed and title. It ends up working out so well. And so I think there's a lot of prospects there for her to go, okay, Daemon and the Blacks won't give me what I want. Aemond is at my mercy now. If I just, take him out, I don't get anything out of this. I think this is someone who I can have the kind of partnership with, partnership in the sense that we cooperate towards our goals, that I could never manage in the end with Daemon, despite the efforts that we put on there to better understand each other. And I'm really, really interested to see that. I really hope that happens. I cannot wait to see these 2 characters interact more. And I think it sets us up for Like I said in the initial video setting up my bingo, I really do not know where the story goes or how it ends, but I feel like it would just be logical to me for Aemond and Daemon, who are such mirrors of each other, for one of their stories to end in a big confrontation between them, so I hope we get to see that. Essos appears. Nope, that hasn't happened. Dragons die. We've only had one dragon down so far, Vermax. I was really worried during the Queen's Landing operation that someone was going to get taken down, that, just a random rogue soldier was going to take a crack, but nope. Only Vermax has died so far. Pretty rough fate, but, there you go. Westerosi history. No, we haven't really had the time for history lessons. Ships sink. Oh yeah, in droves, in absolute droves. Just to prove it off the top of my head, in the end, I'm pretty sure that both Corlys's flagship and the Pirate Queen, whose name I can't remember, her flagship, both end up going down, which would make a lot of sense because, the structural integrity of both of them is just cooked. A Kotsk reference, obviously not, but I would like to shout out that the singing scene in Daemon's camp in episode 2, that feels very much like the House of the Dragon creative team. We're looking over at what, the progress on Akotsk and saying, oh, we can take notes from that. We can actually not simply have a scene of, characters singing merriment, generic medieval stuff, but we can actually directly take cues about characters are trying to tell a story through the music that relates to what they're going through in the world. Criston Cole acts like Jean/Anakin. Criston Cole has basically been a non-event so far. He's just been waiting around for Aemon's reinforcements. So that's going to get interesting now that, Vhagar has shown up overhead and he does know he can march in Harrenhal. It's going to be interesting to see what they find here. And that is going to be very, very interesting now that the balance of power has been upset, that the Blacks are the dominant force in Westeros. And the main, force of opposition to that, because there is the Hightower army, but the main force of opposition is Criston Cole, his army, and if Aemond lives, Aemond and Vhagar hanging out around like Harrenhal, God's Eye kind of area, southern Riverlands. I'm going to be very interested to see where they go from there and trying to keep the Green cause alive. Larys is on fire. He has had a lot of great moments so far. My second favourite scene from the first episode, outside Corlys navigating the Teeth, was definitely the Larys Aegon traffic stop scene. That was so funny. I think, unfortunately, it didn't 10 out of 10 for me because for some reason they gave him the clumsy line delivery of, the reason my friend can't kneel to Rhaenyra is because he is the usurper, rather than just having Larys say, the reason my friend can't forsake the usurper is because he is the usurper. Like, would that not be so much better of a line? But in any case, I can't highlight an absolutely cracking Larys moment so far, but he is well on the way there. Like, I am so invested in Larys and Aegon having their cross-country road trip adventure. It's so good. It's so incongruous with everything else that's going on at the moment. I do not know whose side he's even going to end up on at this point, if he is ride or die for Aegon. I mean, probably, because he's the one he can most easily manipulate, but in any case, I am excited, so excited, to see where all that goes. Sweet home Valyria. You know it, I know it, it happened. I honestly surprised it didn't escalate more. For what it's worth, my theory of the scene is that I don't think Alicent is pursuing that kind of route at all. I think this is very much a case of she was strongly leaning on, emotion and appeal and even physical comfort purely in the sense of as a mother, and Aemond, who has a troubled relationship to people in general, but particularly to women. I feel like he took the signals in a very different direction, and that's the kind of thing to be that she would be concerned about a potential escalation in the future. And you can understand how that would further contribute to her ties fraying to the Greens, because she really doesn't want to end up in another Targaryen marriage in that kind of way. Dragon does something suicidal. Interesting. I'm gonna go no on this one. Sheepstealer does a lot of wanton murder of other people, but nothing suicidal. And I don't really think Vermax or Moondancer or anything are doing anything particularly stupid or irrational. You know, they're following the commands of those who are in charge of them. It's not really Vermax's fault that he goes down. Yeah, I think so far the dragons have all been fine on a decision-making level. Avengers Endgame. I mean, yeah, I'm going to count this one because we get a whole pretty unnecessary scene that's dedicated to, okay, Daemon and his army are really cool, but there's something mysterious and ominous in the woods. And it turns out to be the North have ambushed and cut the head off of a Lannister lord. And it's meant to hit, and it doesn't hit for me, but they're trying to do this kind of Avengers Endgame moment. It's meant to hit as, oh my god, you remember the Starks, the good guys from Game of Thrones? They're here and they're uniting with Daemon's cool army. They're all in the same faction now, with the little Tully kid and everything. Otto Death Stare. Yes, we get multiple shots of Otto's, well, dead head on the floor, staring. And I wouldn't say he's particularly impressed with anyone around him either when they do find him. Heads roll. The exact same scene handles this. I was kind of worried in episode 1 because Grand Maester Orwell did not get beheaded, so we missed out on a beheading, and I feel like one character loses their head later in the episode, but I'm blanking on who it is. But it's a moot point because Otto and that piece of scum, Master of Laws guy, get dealt with. Cool, can tick this off. Cat. No cats. Backstabbed. How do I count this one? Because the thing is, I don't think I'm going to count this. So there are no literal backstabs that I can think of, and metaphorically speaking, in these 2 episodes, there's only a single betrayal, and that I can think of. Unless you want to count the City Watch, but the City Watch aren't really like betraying the Kingsguard and co. They're being loyal to Daemon. And the thing about Alicent's betrayal is there are 2 things that make me say this is not a backstab, which is, number 1, it's not like a cynical attempt to advance her own power. It's very clearly, let's try to make peace, and some of us will be happy and, some of us will have to die. But that leads to the second part, which is that it is selling out Aegon, but Aegon is no longer there to have the metaphorical knife put into his back, even if that was the initial plan. So I don't really think this qualifies as a full-on backstab. I think that it ends up being more of like a contingency plan. It's you don't call like one side giving up and trying to negotiate peace, essentially, a backstab in a vacuum. Like, you would count it in some cases. So if we want to go for a real-life historical example, I think Philippe Pétain and company undermining the French Republic fighting against the Nazis, that to me is what a peace faction committing an actual backstab looks like. But I don't think it's on that level with Alicent because it lacks the same level of mendacity, and because there's not really an intent there of we're actually going to throw a bunch of the people who are fighting and dying under the bus right now. People do end up getting killed by Daemon and taking over the capital, but I think Alicent's ideal number there is, again, 0. Grand Maester Orwell conspires. Orwell has been completely conspiracy-free so far. He has played it absolutely straight. I'm very happy that he's alive. If, the only thing that he's done in that kind of vein is selling out Otto, which is come on, Otto's down in the cells, he's doomed to... Oh, does he even... He doesn't even sell out Otto necessarily. He just sells out the Master of Laws. So, yeah, Orwell's... He's keeping himself clean so far. We'll see. We'll see if he gets up to anything, but I like him whether he plays it straight or not. I'm just happy he didn't get his head cut off and he didn't get killed by Daemon. Aegon. The field trip continues, but I think to qualify as Aegon, he's got to die, or he's literally got to get to a point where it's I am getting on a boat to, a Shy or Yeti or something, and I'm literally never going to be seen again. Peaceful retirement. Obviously, this is what Alicent and Helaena were going for. I respect the attempt. They did not get that far. And obviously the thing I'm most excited to see in the next episode, other than the Larys and Aegon road trip, is what happens with Rhaenyra and Alicent and Helaena in this meeting. The 3 queens, really. Knight in full plate goes overboard. Yes, we got this in spades. I'm actually shocked that Corlys did not end up drowning. I think that's kind of outrageous. I'm completely fine with it because I love that Corlys, who is this character who has lost like everything except for his grandkids and who has no ulterior motive power play to work towards. I'm really happy that he's still alive. He's almost like the Blacks equivalent of Kristen Cole in some kind of sense. Like, obviously very different characters, very different motivations, but there is that same kind of sense of I'm still left here after everything that's transpired somehow, but I'm really important to my faction. What do I even do now? But that's getting off topic. The point is, yes, a lot of people drown because they brought armor to the battle. You can argue about whether that was a good call or not. Rhaenyra and Alicent communicate. Has not happened yet. Will obviously happen in the next episode. I'm surprised that this is actually going down in this way. I really thought the Queen's Landing was going to get messed up a lot more. 4 weddings and or funerals. Not only has there been no hint of a wedding, but we actually don't even see any funeral yet for Jacaerys. There's his body being brought back in, and I think that is suitably dramatic, and it's given an amazing performance from Emma Darcy. But no funerals yet. The way that the season is going, like, bodies are dropping, named characters are dropping fast. I think we could hit 4 funerals. I could see it happening. So that's the update on the bingo after 2 episodes. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell. And let me know in the comments what you're enjoying most about the show so far. And I will see you after the 3rd or perhaps 4th episode, I imagine, to go back to the bingo and give my updated thoughts on what's been happening and how much closer we are to bingo.